Hello, beautiful hearts. Today we're talking about narcissistic mothers and 4 evil things that they teach their children. I'm a firm believer that every mother is a good example. Yep, you heard me right. Every mother is a good example as to what to be, what to imitate, while others are a good example, a great example of what not to be and what never to imitate. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because narcissistic mothers are the perfect example of what you never want to be. Not only are we going to talk about the 4 evil things that narcissistic mothers teach their children, but at the end of the video, we're also going to talk about some tools, some ways to overcome what has been ingrained and hardwired into us. So the 4 evil things that narcissistic mothers teach are disdain, disgust, contempt, and envy. Now the first 3, disdain, disgust, and contempt, they're very similar, and we'll talk about how they're different later on. But the one thing that they do have in common is that they leave a child with a very deep-rooted sense of self-loathing. There's an expression, oh, that child has a face only a mother can love. In other words, if no one else in the world likes us or loves us or finds good in us, it's common belief that our parents will always be there for us. Our parents will love us. Our parents have our back. That's just a given, right? And that's the way children see it too. You know, they look at their life and they're like, okay, I have a roof over my head. I have food, I'm fed, I'm clothed. There's a set of rules in my house because my parents care about me. Parents that give rules, it's because of love. So I am loved, but then why the heck do I feel so much hate towards myself? It's a very confusing time in a child's life, because the parent, if you question your parent, like, I don't feel like you love me, they will make you, the narcissistic parent, will make you feel foolish for even suggesting such a thought. They'll make you feel shame for even contemplating such a reality. They'll point out all these other things that prove love, and what the child doesn't realize, because they're children and they're not meant to have to deal with such emotionally difficult situations, what they don't realize is with all the things that the narcissistic parent points out as evidence of love, the one thing that's lacking is their emotional needs. The child is suffering emotional starvation, and it's not even validated by the parent. So they have all of this confusion as to, okay, well, look at, my mom says I have this and that, and she says it's ridiculous for me to doubt their love. Why do I feel so bad? I'm going to tell you right now why and how that narcissistic parent was able to instill that self-loathing inside. A narcissistic parent provides their children with a daily, consistent flow of emotional projection. The narcissist feels contempt inside. The narcissist feels disgust with themselves. And so they project it onto their children. But children don't know what projection is. Children don't know that when the narcissist is projecting disdain, it's because they're feeling that inside. They automatically soak up those negative emotions, thinking it's because of them. They don't have the emotional capacity to understand what emotional projection is. And what makes it even more confusing is the narcissistic parent won't use the word disgust, disdain, or contempt. They won't use the word hate. So they covertly imply it in the way that they raise their children. For example, they'll say something like, how could you possibly have done such an awful thing? What kind of person would do such a bad thing? So they're just asking a question, but that question has an implication. The implication is that you are an awful person for doing whatever you did. And when you compare it to the supposed crime that was done, The degree of anger that the narcissistic parent showers on their child is overwhelming. Another way that they'll do this, and this was done in my case, I was told this, I don't even know how many times, from the earliest age I can remember. My mom's favorite saying was, Michelle, I love you because you're my daughter, but I don't like you as a person. Talk about damaging a child and creating self-loathing. In other words, what a child hears is, you love me because you have to. I was born into this family. You feel an obligation to, but if you had the choice, you don't like me and you would want nothing to do with me because there's something wrong with me. That's what narcissistic parents teach their kids when they imply things with their questions, with their accusations. And so they use this reoccurring superiority and matter-of-factness to make their kids hate themselves. For example, how could you be so stupid? Don't you have a brain? Don't you ever think? Or if it's from a divided family, something that they'll do to really just grind their children is, you're just like your father, or you're just like your mother, the other parent who they hold in contempt. So what does the child do? But they absorb that contempt and think that it's their fault. They think they have failed. There is something inherently wrong with them that their parent cannot find good in them. For anyone that has gone through that, for anyone that is going through that right now, or adult children of narcissistic parents, those emotions of contempt, disdain, disgust, they were not a part of your core identity. They were not a part of who you were. They were planted in you. It's like if you have a garden and you know what's planted in your garden and somebody comes along and plants different things in your garden, while all the seeds are underneath the ground, you don't even know they're there, but they are still part of your garden, even though they're not supposed to be. That's what happened to you. That's what happened to me. Things were planted in us that grew, took root, and became a part of us. Okay, but they really weren't supposed to be there, and we did not deserve that kind of treatment. It was wrong. It had nothing to do with us. The fourth evil thing that a parent, a narcissistic mother, plants in their child is envy. Now, there's two kinds of envy. Okay, there's the envy that the parent feels where they feel in competition with their child. And that was something I faced. And it was the strangest thing. It was as if everything I wanted to do, everything I liked, became what my mother liked. If I wanted to learn this career, all of a sudden she was doing it. If I wanted to do this, all of a sudden she was doing it. It was the strangest thing. If I was going to get married, she was racing me to the altar. Okay, there's that kind of envy. But I want to talk about a different kind of envy. I want to talk about an envy that gets created from the time you're really young. Because the first kind of envy, that happened when I hit my teen years and in my early 20s. But when you're younger, your parent creates an envy in you by comparing you to other kids and always seeming to feel like she lost out. For example, a narcissistic mother will say, wow, so-and-so's daughter does this and does that for them. They are so lucky. I mean, what an amazing daughter she has. She is just, oh my goodness, and blah, 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 raising that child up. Never once saying anything bad about you, but it's what's implied. What's implied is that her life is less than other people's life, and it's your fault. That's a really big burden to throw on a child. And that kind of envy parents do from the time children are toddlers. And then, if it's the same-sex child, like a mother and a daughter, as soon as that daughter starts hitting her teen years and people begin to notice her, then she's hit with the other kind of envy as well. So what an awful, awful way to imply to a child, because what happens is you begin, what's implied is that you are an utter failure. Your mother is unhappy because she had you as a daughter. If she had had so-and-so as a daughter, she would have been happy. But because she has you, her life is bad. You are a failure. That is the fourth evil thing that narcissistic mothers pass on to their children. And the toxic shame that they are instilling in you, it really becomes hardwired into your system, because in between these moments of envy, these moments of throwing contempt or projecting contempt, disgust, disdain onto you, they have their moments of inconsistent normality. And so by giving you those toxic emotions and then interchanging it with normality, she doesn't have to say that you're a failure. She doesn't have to say, I hate you. You are disgusting. You are an awful kid. She doesn't have to say it, because by her behavior, you arrive at that conclusion on your own. And that's why it becomes such a part of your personality. Because of the fact that you are reaching this conclusion. And so toxic shame winds up being hardwired into your system. And once that happens, you are trapped in the narcissist web of thinking that if you can only be enough, if you can only be good enough, then mom will be happy. And now I want to get into what you can do if any of this resonates with you and you feel like, oh my God, did we have the same parent? That's exactly what happened to me. I want to start talking about what you can do to release that toxic shame so that you can get in touch with your core persona, the person you were supposed to be had you been born into a family that was healthy. And yes, it is possible. It is possible to undo the damage that a narcissistic mother inflicted on you. It takes time. It takes a little bit of work. It takes effort. It takes compassion, self-compassion, self-love. But it can be done. And believe me, life is worth living without all of that toxic shame. So let's talk about a few things that you can do to begin your road of healing. The first thing is to recognize that you are and always have been enough. Your mother's misery, her disdain, her envy, they had nothing to do with you and everything to do with her. That's a truth that has to come about, that you have to come to grips with. And the next thing you have to begin doing is starting to differentiate who you are from who the narcissist wants you to think you are. Because what happens is when you've been told such negativity for so long, this is you, right? This is you, and this is how the narcissist says you are. Somewhere along the way, you left who you were and you joined the side of what the narcissist said you were, and you began to look at you the same way and with the same eyes and with the same disdain, disgust, contempt as the narcissist looked at you. Okay? They say that what your parents tell you as a child, what's repeated over and over, becomes your inner voice as an adult. So you need to begin to weed through how you really are from how the narcissist taught you to view yourself, which was wrong. One of the ways to do that is to first pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your inner critic. What are the things you tell yourself on a daily basis? You need to get in touch with your root beliefs, because if you don't know what your root beliefs are, they'll continue to control your life, okay? Just to give you an example, one of my root beliefs that were taught to me was that I was not lovable. I was an unlovable kid. Okay? That became a belief that I had in me. I was born into this world with a broken arm that my mother never knew I had. How do you have a child and not realize that her arm was broken? My mother would tell me that I liked to be in the crib, that she would leave me alone for hours because I didn't like love. I didn't like to be held. Well, I had a freaking broken arm. Okay? But we don't talk, she never brings that up. On top of that, from the time I was in elementary school, I'm talking 6, 7, 8 years old, I was told stories about nightmares that she had about how evil I was, and that, she had to do away with me because there was something inherently bad within me. Yeah. Anyway, this isn't a sob story. My point is that was a very strong belief in me. I was not lovable. I didn't know that was a belief in me. That was planted in me. So I had to go through my garden, my thoughts, and realize that any time I was telling myself I was not lovable, no one would ever love me, it was because of what I was told as a child. Then I had to put that belief to test. Well, is that true? I mean, you're awful. You're so unlovable. What's so unlovable about you? What's so evil about you? Well, I couldn't really think of anything that made me evil. Imperfect, yes. But evil? No, I couldn't really think of anything. So I deconstructed that belief. And I combined it with finding good in myself on a daily basis. Every single day before I'd go to sleep, what were 3 things that I liked that I did? They could be little things. I was kind to this person. I handled this good. I like the fact that I'm like this. I began to find and point out to myself the positive things that I liked in myself. For so long, we only viewed in ourselves what our parents pointed out, which was always negative. And so we began to do the same things to ourselves, always point out our negative. Well, I put a stop to that. You have to put a stop to that and start on a daily basis focusing on the good that's there, overturning those negative beliefs. As children, we had no idea how to cope with what was going on. We had no idea how to deal with the things that came at us because of having a narcissistic parent. But now we're adults. If we do nothing, if we don't do anything, we're actually making a choice. If we think we're not making a choice, we are. We're making a choice to do nothing and to stay in it, and to stay in a victim stage, and to stay in a negative frame of mind with a negative shame-based core identity. Don't make that choice. Life is so much better when you realize your worth, when you develop self-love, self-compassion, self-respect, because that's the real you. Unfortunately, we couldn't choose our parents. Unfortunately, we got what we got. But we can choose how we treat ourselves now, and we can overcome the toxic shame that narcissistic parents instilled within us.